Hello, welcome to the Fire Safety Forum, sponsored by and hosted by the Piedmont Pines Neighborhood Association. I'm Peter Seidel, your moderator tonight, and we're eager to learn, all kinds of valuable information to help you stay safe in your homes and protect your loved ones. And let's get started. I'm going to hand this over to Natasha Raja for some logistical information and how we're going to carry this out.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I wanted to give a quick shout out and thanks to all our panelists who are taking this time to engage with us, educate us, and also answer all our key questions. And also for all of the attendees, your time as well. Just a quick few housekeeping things. All attendees are muted. If you do have any technical questions, please use the chat feature and send message to the host, so we'll be able to help you. And if you have questions for any of our speakers, please use the Q&A feature. I will remind you guys time to time also during the webinar. For the best viewing experience, as you can see on this slide, you might need to change your setting to speaker view, as you can see it on the right-hand side, so it will give you a more in-depth view of the webinar. Lastly, please complete the survey at the end of this webinar. We really value your feedback, and that will really help us. This webinar is being recorded, so if you do need to go back and view any content, you will be able to, or if you need to jump out earlier, you'll be able to get this video later as well. Just give us a couple days for the logistic wise, and you will get the link from Robbie. With that said, let's jump right into the agenda. And Peter, I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you. So these are the speakers we have lined up. There have been a few last minute changes, as you'll see on the next slide. We're going to start with Brandon Harami speaking for the Office of the Mayor, Mayor Sheng Tao. We'll also hear from Council Member Ramachandran. She's been promoting fire safety legislation and has had that at a high priority. We're going to hear from Damon Covington from the fire department on fire department issues, wildlife working group, vegetation inspections, and the rest. As you can see, near the end, we're going to hear from the Oakland Fire Safe Council, which is a citizens group that's advocating for fire safety in the high risk parts of Oakland. These are the panelists updated, and these are the times that we've set aside, and we're going to sprinkle Q&A in between or at the end of each speaker's session. And with that, let's start with Brandon Harami. Thank you very much for taking time to talk to us today, Brandon.
Of course, and thank you so much, Peter. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Stan. Thank you to the Piedmont Pine Neighborhood Association. It is always a pleasure to come speak with you. Usually I'm doing the back end stuff and helping on the Zoom side. So it's an honor to be able to speak on behalf of Mayor Sheng Tao, who used to be your district representative, and I had the pleasure of working in the office then, so I am not new to the issues facing wildfire and wildfire needs in the city. So for those who don't know me, my name is Brandon Harami. I am the Director of Community Resilience for the Office of Mayor Sheng Tao. I previously served as Policy Director for the District for Office, where I served for about 3 years. And Mayor Tao sends her regards and wishes she could be here this evening. However, I have, like I mentioned, I have a lot of experience and work on wildfire prevention for the office. So I am really excited and very happy to be sharing some of our priorities. And it is a priority. As Mayor Tao has always said, wildfire prevention is a top priority for the city of Oakland. And we are still committed to that work. Some of the work that we had done in the past was establishing the wildfire prevention working group, working on the vegetation management plan, moving forward the final approval of the Piedmont Pines Neighborhood Association undergrounding, which we are very excited about, and numerous other policies, including helping amend the vegetation management plan and so forth. And tonight you're going to hear from several members of our administration who do a lot of the day-to-day work that the city is focused on. I see members of the fire department. I see Joe DeVries here. These are our fearless workers who are on the ground every single day working for you and working to improve the overall safety of the city of Oakland. And our office is really committed to working with these individuals to provide leadership, direction, collaboration, and big picture goals on wildfire prevention and disaster preparedness, though there's already been a lot of alignment in the past. And a lot of this work was working collaboratively on the recently proposed budget that the mayor's office had introduced. As you may have seen in the news, about 2 weeks ago, we announced our proposed budget for our first year as the mayor's office. And as you probably know, Oakland is experiencing about a $360 million deficit expected over the next 2 years, which is the largest deficit in Oakland's history. And in spite of this, we have introduced a budget that continues to fund critical vegetation management work, as well as avoids layoffs. And that was a huge undertaking. For example, in 2008, the city laid off like tons and tons of dozens of workers, including 80 police officers. It eliminated the park ranger program that you used to see in the hills and so forth. And we actually introduced a budget that maintained that critical staffing in our police department, our fire department, our public works department, while reorganizing the structure of the city to be more efficient and ensure that we are still able to hire in key critical roles in various departments. And this is because public safety and quality services are a top priority for our office. And we hope to combine this preservation of critical services with strong investments into climate resilience and innovative policy focused on the health and safety of our communities. This includes the vegetation management plan, which we worked to amend while serving on the Oakland City Council. And thanks to the input of community members, I see some members of the Fire Safe Council here tonight who did a lot of work. A lot of staff put in a lot of work, and we worked very collaboratively with Councilmember Dan Kolb's office. We were able to introduce amendments that create stronger rules around clearing around essential evacuation routes, and it gives staff more flexibility in deciding what to plant with an emphasis on climate resilience. You will see that plan. We'll talk a little bit more about it tonight, but you will see that plan forthcoming, and you'll have an opportunity to read it in detail and weigh in on it. And this plan is very important because once this plan is passed, we can move forward on bringing back the Wildfire Assessment District, the WPAD, which used to be dedicated wildfire prevention funding for the Oakland Hills. And what's so important about this fund is in situations where the city has to face budget cuts, you may not always have a mayor and a city council who are aligned around wildfire prevention. I hope that doesn't happen, but having dedicated funding will help preserve that critical resource. We are also working closely with regional partners to develop plans for larger regional coordination, because we realize that wildfire does not recognize borders, city limits, or other artificial lines. We are more resilient when we work together as a region. And our office is currently deeply engaged with your neighbors in Montclair, just over the other side of the canyon. And we've been working closely with Joe DeVries and other members of the city to really push PG&E to reconsider their risk model and reconsider how they do undergrounding in the city of Oakland. We are very eager to see the efforts that we did to underground in Piedmont Pines continue across the hills and at a much faster rate, mind. And we also continue to advocate for our state partners to better manage their land. We are very excited to see Caltrans taking wildfire prevention seriously in the hills. And I know I keep bringing him up, but thank you, Joe DeVries, again, for all your work on that. There's a reason that he is also here at this event tonight. And like I said, all this work could not have happened without the leadership and direction of our staff. While our office, the mayor's office, provides some big picture direction and guidance, the day-to-day work of maintaining property, attending meetings, writing letters and policies, responding to emergencies, writing grants, et cetera, that happens because of our fabulous Oakland employees, and which is why our office understands why preserving the staff that we have is critical to the success of Oakland and to the safety of our communities. And you'll hear a lot more from this evening. They'll go into some details about the work that they do day to day. They all play a major part in this critical discussion. And I will be dropping my contact info in the chat so you have a direct line to me in case you lost it after I transitioned. And then I'll also be working to address any questions or anything else you have this evening. Once again, my name is Brandon Harami. Thank you so much for having us tonight. The mayor sends her regards. And I am very excited to be engaging in this fabulous discussion. And I will pass this on to you, Robbie.
Yes, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions.
Okay, fabulous.
You are not unfamiliar with my questions.
No, I'm not.
The California Public Utilities Commission recently passed a proposed ruling, which probably hasn't caught your attention yet, but it was just last week, and it's basically eliminating the kind of undergrounding projects that we have been doing in Piedmont Pines in favor of doing other kinds of wildfire prevention programs. And I'm wondering if we think that the city should take a strong action against that proposal. And we would look forward to working with your office and with Vlad to see if we can get that proposal reversed.
Yeah, I understand. If I'm understanding correctly, is that the sort of backstepping of the undergrounding plan that they had rolled? I think like 1,000 miles. I talked to your neighbors in Montclair about that last week.
Right. No, this isn't related to the 10,000 miles. It's eliminating the Rule 20 tariff.
Oh yes, the Rule 20A changes.
Yes. So 20A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, K.
Yeah, I would say that we would be very interested in having that conversation and advocating to maintain those funding sources, because we found that they were very critical for the work that's being done now. And so absolutely, we've already made our opinion to PG&E about undergrounding very clear, especially in the hills. That and I know. Once again, mentioning Joe DeVries. Joe DeVries helped write a letter from the city advocating for the undergrounding and the reassessment of the risk model to ensure that undergrounding in the hills is part of their plan. And so we're very open to having other conversations about how we move undergrounding forward.
Great. Fire safety in the budget, the new budget proposal. We understand that there's been a fire engine purchase that was canceled, and that they will be rotating schedules for what's called browning out the engines. Will that be put in effect in the hills where we need them more than anywhere else?
Yeah, the browning out is very unfortunate. It was a cost-saving effort due to the deficit. We hope that the deficit is not that. We hope that our projected income is much higher. It ends up being much higher than what we project. And if that's the case, we will do some reversals on these public safety, these freezing of public safety positions. We have asked that the fire department make the determination of where the actual browning out will be. And so that would be, we leave it up to the experts. We don't feel like as the mayor's office, we should be dictating that sort of stuff. So we'll leave it up to them. And then if we end up getting more revenue than we expected, that can be a discussion on what public safety services are brought back.
Great. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah.
I don't see Janani on here.
Okay, well,
Oh, there she is.
all right. Oh, okay, great. So let me introduce our District 4 councilperson, Janani Ramachandran. Thank you very much for making time to join us. Ms. Ramachandran has made fire safety a priority during her campaign and in the early part of her tenure as our representative. And so we're eager to hear what she has to say. Thank you very much again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. For those of you who have met yet, my name is Janani Ramachandran, and I am the new council member representing District 4. As many of you, most of you probably know, redistricting has led to District 4, including a significantly larger part of the Oakland Hills and Wildfires urban interface zones. We now have the North Hills included in District 4, which is pretty significant for many reasons, including the fact that there are now fewer council members. There's one, at least, fewer council member, notably that no longer has a high wildfire zone in their district. So we have been activated on making sure that we have wildfire prevention at the top of our mind. We have staff members who on my team who regularly attend the wildfire prevention working group that's organized and co-facilitated by Joe DeVries. We are part of meetings and active with different neighborhood groups, including the park associations, Friends of Joaquin Miller Park, Sassel Creek, etc., as well as Oakland Fire Safe Council and others that are working on many initiatives that you are a part of. I just wanted to touch upon a couple of things I was asked to discuss when it comes to the budget, and happy to pause anytime and just launch into a Q&A. Wildfire prevention was very much listed in our District 4 council priorities. While we have reviewed the mayor's proposed budget along with many of you all in the past less than 2 weeks at this point, we are in the process of soliciting as much community feedback as possible before making any public declarations about how we feel about specific parts of the proposed budget. I encourage you to attend our District 4 Budget Town Hall happening this Wednesday at Monahan's, and also by Zoom if you're able to join us. We are basically making sure that on one hand, existing efforts by the city when it comes to wildfire prevention isn't cut, while continuing to maintain a focus that I listed at the very top of our budget priorities, which is making sure we are being as proactive as possible when it comes to applying for funds that can help us address wildfire prevention. This includes CAL FIRE grants, most notably and most available. I believe the first or second month into our term, we signed on letters of support and helped advocate for 2 nonprofits applying for CAL FIRE grants. And want to continue to do that and be that voice of advocacy with various levels of government when it comes to proactively applying for grants, be that the county, state, and federal government, with the most opportunity, of course, being at the state level right now. I also wanted to mention when it comes to advocacy for wildfire prevention, I have been to Sacramento a couple of times and have visited and had meetings with our insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara. As a fellow new resident within a WUI zone, I have personal experience in understanding how hard it is to obtain homeowners insurance in this area, and the many risks and many existing residents who are facing who are seeing their homeowners insurance being withdrawn and not being renewed. We've tried to advocate in some specific instances, liaising between the insurance commissioner's office and residents to see how we can support the process of folks transitioning out of certain insurance coverage, and also being a voice of advocacy for state legislation that's trying to support making sure that all residents have access to full coverage, access to homeowners insurance as much as possible. We are tomorrow, actually, at tomorrow's council meeting, we are co-authoring along with Councilmember Dan Kalb a bill of support from Assemblymember Connolly, which specifically addresses this issue. And stay tuned for more information, probably in late summer, closer to wildfire season. We will be having an event with Ricardo Lara and his office to discuss wildfire prevention when it comes to insurance, among other things. Not sure how I'm doing on time. I can touch upon a couple of other issues that we're plugged into. Looking back more internally, the recent storms has definitely put on our radar how important public works and specifically our tree services division is. My team recently met with the tree services division that made very clear in demarcating what they're able to do right now and what they're not. One thing that certainly our office hears very often is that residents in high wildfire zones and similar areas have a pretty high standard when it comes to vegetation inspections and the annual inspections from the fire department. Yet when it comes to city-owned property as well as Caltrans-owned property, there seems to be somewhat of a double standard, and it's not always maintained at the level it frankly should be. So what we have learned from meeting with the Tree Services Division and our regular ongoing meetings with the Public Works Department is certainly that they do not have the resources to do the regular pruning necessary within city property, and are really focusing their efforts on emergency and hazardous situation when it comes to trees falling down or causing emergency situations to residents. And that's a major issue that has been going on since 2008 recession, when many of their staff were impacted. And in the course of this budget process, I will make every effort to explore that issue and to see how we can get tree services back to full capacity, especially when it comes to maintenance of city land. And there's been recent positive news from the Caltrans side that they are in the process of starting work along Highway 13 and 24 in accordance with their vegetation management plan. That's going to lead to be more work being done along the sides of highways as well.
Johnny, this is Stan Weisner. I just have a couple follow-ups. Thanks for your commentary and your support for these issues. You have a great advisory council, which I'm on. You've met frequently. You put on a crime prevention forum. You've had this upcoming budget input. So you're listening to your constituents. And of course, we were wondering, given your 7 priorities on your budget proposal, since we were listed as number 5 when it came to disaster preparedness, you mentioned it's still a high priority, but where will it rank in your priority list going forward, and how strongly will you have support from other districts who aren't in these zones?
Absolutely. I made a mistake of numbering my priorities in my list, but they're all important. We can't talk about public safety without talking about fire prevention, because it's increasingly on people's consciousness that a wildfire impacting the Oakland Hills will have pretty deleterious consequences for many other parts of Oakland as well. And one way where I believe that we're getting that support from more council members, or certainly at least enough for issues to be taken seriously, is the fact that 3 council members, at least 3 council members, but 3 that I know of in total, included wildfire prevention in their budget priorities memo. I really do believe that the tragedies across the state, frankly, in the last couple of years have put wildfires on the map, including for those who did not necessarily live through 1991 or some of the previous fires in Oakland. There's more of a consciousness of how damaging it is across the entire state. And that's important as well as for our newer Oakland residents and those living in the hills and elsewhere, about why this has to be taken seriously and has Oakland-wide impacts, not just in specific WUI areas.
There's been a lot of talk about creating a regional wildfire assessment district that would be beyond just even Oakland. How strongly would you support that measure? And you know of any activity others I know in the city are working on, but have you supported that strongly?
I'm absolutely supportive of recreating the Wildfire Prevention Assessment District. I only 4.5 months into the job, but I want to make sure that as we head into, as soon as the budget's passed, I imagine that's around the time where people will start gearing up for ballot measures coming up in 2024. And that's when we will be out there seeing who those stakeholders are and helping draft the potential new WPAD. At the beginning, when I mentioned that either me or my team is actively participating in some of these groups right now, be it meetings of the Oakland Fire Safe Council, the Wildfire Prevention Working Group, Friends of Joaquin Miller, etc. I know those are some, not all, but at least some of the stakeholders who would probably be involved in WPAD 2.0. And
there's WPAD, and then there's this regional effort that involves other districts and other cities close to the hills.
Yeah, and I have also started to speak to more legislators in neighboring cities who have high-risk wildfire zones as well. For example, in Berkeley, they passed, I believe, some version of a similar version of a WPAD that taxed the entire city of Berkeley. And, we will look into what those implications are. Is there polling that shows whether or not something like that could pass in Oakland? Because certainly we know the consequences would spread to the entire of Oakland, but I certainly want to get a pulse on some of those issues and what some of our other neighboring cities are doing. We are also, we have on our radar the MOU that is being formed, and also in our budget priorities memo, I believe specifically referenced financing for being a part of this East Bay Regional MOU of sorts.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking time to talk to us. And you mentioned your budget town hall coming up in a couple of days in Oakland, and obviously in Oakland at Monahan's on Mountain Boulevard in Oakland. Thanks again, Council Member Ramachandran. And now I'd like to move to the fire department. And we're going to hear from our Deputy Chief of Fire, Damon Covington. Thank you very much, Chief Covington, for making time to talk to us.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Good evening. I am sitting in place of Chief Reggie Freeman, who regrets that he was not able to attend this evening. I'm joined by my Assistant Chief, Matthew Nicolini, who's also here to answer any questions as we move along. As you may know, Chief Freeman will be leaving us very shortly. June 21st will be his last day here. He's taken a job in the private sector and moving back to his adopted hometown of Connecticut. So he will be sorely missed. He's helped us make tremendous strides over the last 2 years, but we think he's left us in a pretty good position. Some of the key highlights that we've been able to accomplish over the last 2 years. We very recently, last Friday, graduated an academy of 32 members, and we had one other academy before that of another 27 members, I believe. So when Chief Freeman arrived 2 years ago, we were our staffing was extremely low, which led to a lot of mandatory overtimes for people, and it really caused a lack of work-life balance, and it was drastically affecting people's mental health. So we've made a tremendous strides in getting personnel in the door and getting them trained up so that they can be on the fire engines and the fire trucks, and we can send people home to try and create that work-life balance. We recently received a SAFER grant for another 35 members that we're preparing our academy for later this year or early next year. So from a staffing perspective, we're in a much stronger position. We're moving forward with a plan of action to make sure that we keep our staffing levels adequate so that people can go home to their families and not have to work 7, 8, 9 shifts in a row, which is just unhealthy. We recently were able to acquire another tiller truck and 2 new fire engines. Our fleet is still a point of contention for us. We desperately need to update our fleet. And we have a 10-year CIP plan that we put together, a capital improvement plan that we're going to utilize to make sure that our apparatus are staying up to standards that we need from industry standards, so that we're able to respond as we need to, as well as our firehouses. Some of them are in disrepair, and that's part of our CIP plan, is to get those up to speed. And as we work towards getting engine 10 remodeled and engine 29 should break ground in 2025 for one of our new firehouses. Trying to think what else we've done. As from a budget standpoint, someone asked a question earlier. Every department in the city has been asked to take a budget cut to try and close the budget gap. We were asked to take a 7% reduction. So part of that reduction is brownouts. The question was asked earlier, brownouts are going to include firehouses in the hills, in the high fire danger area. We are working strategically with the union and our administrative staff to figure out what the rotation will be. The rotation will rotate through the entire city. So at some point, firehouses in the hills will be browned out. We're trying to be strategic about that and not brown them out during high fire danger times of the year, especially not during red flag days and months. We're preparing for what we think is going to be a long, arduous wildland season with all the overgrowth. Fire Marshal Bryant's here, so I won't steal all of her thunder as she talks about what's going to happen moving into fire season. But we are preparing currently. We're getting all of our equipment on our engines to get ready for fire season, as we know it's going to be approaching and it may start a little early. We are also working with CAL FIRE and other regional fire departments to work on pre-positioning our apparatus for red flag days, as well as upstaffing and adding additional resources and personnel on days that are red flag days, or days that we feel like it's a strong chance that we could have high fire danger on those days. So brownouts are here. You guys will all know about them. They'll be announced. We'll put together a schedule. We're not expecting to start that schedule until July at the earliest. And we're still in the planning stages of what's going to happen with those. One of the additional measures that we're taking is that we have a pilot program with our WUI sensors. Our WUI sensors are going to be placed in 10 strategic locations throughout the Oakland Hills. What the WUI sensors do, they will in no way alert anyone. They're not audible. You probably won't even see them. But what the WUI sensors do is they detect smoke in the air as early as possible and send a signal to our fire dispatch, and hopefully get resources to those areas where those sensors are located as early as possible to try and prevent a wildfire from really taking off. So that's a pilot program that we're working on with a private company called N5. And we'll get data from that and see if it's something that we want to move forward with throughout our entire city. I think that's pretty much it from the fire department. I'll take any questions you might have.
First of all, I wanted to congratulate you. We had a fire up here, I think it was on Long Walk recently, and our community was applauding the very fast response and how quickly that, that could have been a major disaster up there, because it's very woodsy and very crowded. So thank you very much from all of us. How has the regional cooperation evolved in the 2 years since Chief Freeman has been here? And I know that's about the same time that the working group was started. We'll hear more detail from Joe DeVries, but from the fire department's perspective, what do you see has changed?
Additional collaboration. Chief Freeman was a lightning rod for partnerships. He's very, very adept at reaching out to other fire departments and coming up with a plan of action. We've always had a strong working relationship with our surrounding fire departments, but we've gotten even more in depth with them from a strategic level as well as the operations level. So I would say in the time that I've been in the fire department, we probably have the closest relationship from a countywide perspective as we've had at any other time.
And so what does that look like for us as residents? What would be different as a result of that cooperation and coordination?
I don't know that anything would be different from an Oakland perspective. We still have, like I said, we still operate from the same format of, if it's a red flag day, we're going to pre-position rigs. So from that perspective, other entities might be in our city helping us to upstaff rigs to get to fires earlier if we feel like it's going to be an extra dangerous day. So from that perspective, we're pooling our resources at a county level. So on a red flag day or a high fire danger day, other entities will be, from CAL FIRE to other entities in our jurisdiction, will have strike teams in the city ready to respond as quickly as possible.
Great. Could you, is there any specific legislation or citywide strategy that you would recommend to improve fire safety in the hills?
I don't have any legislation I would recommend. The two things that I would recommend most is defensible space, which is something that we always try to get the word out about and help our citizens to understand what that does. By creating defensible space, you're giving yourself a chance for your house to be spared in the event of a wildfire. And adhering to parking in the hills.
It's a big issue for us.
Huge issue, you know, and I get it. It's inconvenient to have to, you know, not be able to park in front of your house. But when people park on both sides of the street, it makes it almost impossible for us to get our large apparatus up the hills and into tight spaces where we need to get to try and get to that fire as quickly as possible. So if we did those two things, I think we'd be a long way down the road towards not stopping wildfires, but at least giving us a chance to get to them as quickly as possible.
We've been trying to do our part in terms of the parking issues, which are extreme up here, as you well know.
Mhm.
And I see multiple requests going to 311 asking for cars that are blocking narrow streets to be cited, towed, whatever. And we don't seem to be getting a huge response. It's like, well, they're kind of legal. It may be legal, but it doesn't look safe.
Right. And
is there anything we can do in partnership with your department?
well, we're working with OPD because they're the ticketing agents that can go up there and cite people for parking illegally. We'll also work with DOT to try and maybe get some signs up that say no parking anytime, which would keep people from parking and would make it illegal to park in those spaces, at least on one side of the street.
Right, we would love that.
Yeah, so those are multi-jurisdiction, goals, but it's
Right.
definitely something that we've already started for sure.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Mhm. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Chief Covington. That was really helpful. And we're excited to have your support and your insight on how to solve some of these tricky problems. Let's move on. We're going to hear from Deputy City Administrator Joe DeVries. As Deputy City Administrator, he's got a lot on his plate, but he's going to talk to us in particular about the Wildfire Prevention Working Team and other aspects of wildfire safety. Thank you very much, Joe. It's yours.
Peter, thanks for having me. And I hope you can hear me okay. I didn't do a tech check before the meeting, but I really think between Chief Covington and Brandon and Councilmember Ramachandran, they don't leave a whole lot for me to say because they covered topics so well. But my role in the city administrator's office is to lead the Wildfire Prevention Working Group, which is the official title, and to really see that all of our departments are coordinated on wildfire prevention and take it seriously as a priority. A couple of things I'd like to touch on that came up during the beginning of the talk and just kind of where we've been at for the past year. We haven't made a lot of operational changes for the working group in this past year because the team's been working really well together. Honestly, coming together in 2020 during a time when risk was so high and we had those crazy days of where the sky was blackened on September 9th, 2020. It really was not hard to have other departments see the significance of wildfire prevention and their role in it. There was already a lot of coordination going on. I would say one of the biggest accomplishments for the Wildfire Prevention Working Group that I've observed in the past year is not a singular project or event. More, it's the raising of consciousness across city departments about how important this is. And I was reminded of that last week. I was pulled into a meeting with our Housing Community Development Department, a couple of folks from our fire department, and a couple of folks from our planning department. And I actually didn't know why I was invited to the meeting. So when I got there, I said, "Why am I here?" And the Housing Community Development folks said, "Oh, you're here because you run the Wildfire Prevention Working Group." As the Housing Community Development Department works with the planning department on the general plan, their focus, of course, is on affordable housing and helping us to resolve this affordable housing crisis. And they're proposing an affordable housing overlay for the entire city that would relax standards to allow development to be more dense, to go higher, to have less parking. Again, something we all support as a city to increase affordable housing where it's appropriate. The concern from planning was that the Housing Community Development Department understand the conflict between higher density housing with no parking and wildfire prevention in the high fire severity zone. And so there was very little work that I had to do because the planning staff that are part of our working group did such a good job presenting the case to the housing staff. It was as if they were trained fire department leadership. And so the fact that we've institutionalized the thinking so that a planning department member is advocating a fire department position with the housing department is a sign that the work is paying off, and that pulling people together every month, making sure they're focused on it is really working. The composition of the team has grown a bit since we got started. Certainly, as I mentioned, planning has played a key role, but also our sustainability team. So last year, we moved our sustainability team out of Public Works and into the city administrator's office. That is the team that is implementing our equitable climate action plan. And within that plan, attempting to mitigate climate change and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Wildfire prevention is part and parcel to that. We both have a staffer who attends those meetings now from that team, who's also looking at potential grant funds that might be out there as part of the Inflation Reduction Act that our fire team might not have thought of, or our public works team might not have thought of. So they're seeking additional grant funding within the realm of climate change. And there's a lot of money that's going to be coming down because of that act. In fact, we estimate between $1 and $1.5 billion will come to Oakland, mostly through private incentives like getting a heat pump for your house or getting solar panels. But a lot, both through the IRA and through the Infrastructure Act, will come down to help cities do target hardening, promoting forest health and promoting prevention efforts. And so our sustainability team is helping with that. Another interesting development this year, we were the one city in California last September to get awarded 15 interns that are part of the California Climate Action Corps. This is similar to Civic Corps. The governor created it just for climate action. And most cities around the state got 1 or 2 interns, but our team lobbied and advocated, and we got 15 of them. We have had those interns work with many departments across the city, but in regard to wildfire prevention, they've done some outreach. I know they helped get the mailers out. Hopefully everybody got their mailer. Mine was in the mail today, my reminder to inspect and clean up my property. So they helped the Prevention Bureau get those mailers out. And they're also launching a study of compost and the impact compost has on reducing wildfire risk on parcels. And so they're working with our Prevention Bureau. They've identified a couple of parcels where they're going to spread compost and do a moisture control test on these 2 areas. And this is based on research that was done in Europe and in Marin County. And our belief is that if the data shows what we expect it to show, we can begin to use compost in high fire severity zones to retain moisture in the dirt, in the soil. We believe it will also help promote native plant growth and avoid invasive species. And in the long run, that will also help us prevent wildfires. So that's a really unique project or pilot that they're starting this summer. In the next couple of weeks, they should probably be applying the compost. So that's kind of neat. What's also great is the state was so impressed with the Climate Action Corps fellows that we have this year, that they're giving us 20 fellows next year. So when this current team is done in September, we're going to get a team of 20 new ones, and we're going to embed 3 or 4 of them in the fire department to serve directly with our prevention and our emergency management team. So we're really excited about that, because that just adds people to the effort. They can do outreach, they can do projects, they can help with just about anything, and they're super excited about it. So that's one significant thing for this year. I think I was kind of given some questions to answer ahead of time as far as significant plans for the team this year. I would say bringing forward that vegetation management plan that we've been working on for a long time and getting it successfully adopted by council before the end of the calendar year. We need that plan. We need that plan so that we can go out and actually put a WPAD measure on the ballot and be successful. We also need that plan to continue to pursue grants, because if you don't have a plan, people aren't going to give you money. And so that is a critical thing over the next 7 months, is to get that plan adopted. We did work with the Friends of Joaquin Miller to apply for 2 grants. One was a forest health grant, one was a wildfire prevention grant. We were unsuccessful in getting the forest health grant, but we're keeping our fingers crossed for the other one. We haven't found out yet. And so that's significant. And I wanted to lift up what Councilmember Ramachandran mentioned that I'm really excited about as far as our accomplishments in regards to Caltrans. As she mentioned, Caltrans will be taking action in the next couple of weeks on 24 and 13 to implement their vegetation management plan. And this is really a watershed moment in that for years, Caltrans just cleared 4 foot of roadway on either side of the road, and that was it. And we had to beg, cajole, shout, whatever it took to get them to do a little bit more. Because the governor recognized the importance of wildfire prevention, he directed the department to conduct a statewide vegetation management plan development, and they did it. And so it went through a CEQA process. It has all the environmental considerations, and they're going to be rolling through Oakland, in the next month to implement it, where we will see roadside clearances of up to 24 to 28 feet on either side of the road. So they're going up the hill, addressing those parcels that they've never addressed before without us screaming and shouting at them. That is wonderful news. But I also want to really lift up, I think one of your next speakers will be the fire marshal. She pointed out to Caltrans that their plan failed to cover good portions of East Oakland that we also recognize as having a high risk, and was able to get a commitment from the local maintenance director to increase roadway clearances along 580. So after 13 to the border, making sure where we had, I think, 4 wildfires last year, that those areas are addressed as well. So that was kudos to our fire marshal. She was ready to fight with Caltrans and really advocated well. I think that's regional cooperation. We are committed to this regional MOU. The attorneys have drafted, I think, a pretty decent one that has all of our partners working together. I am reluctant to commit to a regional WPAD. I don't think it's politically feasible to get every jurisdiction in Alameda and Contra Costa counties that are part of this regional collaboration to go in together on a tax measure. I don't think it's feasible in the next year or two. I think what we need to do is get the MOU adopted, get people working together, not just at the staff and administrative level, but also at the political level. And if we can have some wins and some accomplishments and maybe seek some grant funding successfully, then I think we could go back potentially to these entities and ask them to put something on the ballot for their voters. But when it comes to money, my experience with local entities is they kind of want to hold on to their own and not be part of a pool. So that's why I'm hesitant that would actually be effective. But I do think the collaboration is important. We've obviously collaborated a lot on Grizzly Peak. We're going to continue to do that. The logs aren't going anywhere unless people roll them down the hill. And when that happens, we'll try to replace them. The city of Berkeley, East Bay Regional Park, they seem fully committed to that. We'll reconvene with them to discuss closures for July 4th, as we've done the last few years, and we'll keep maintaining that. And I think, we also just need to continue to look to the east to make sure we're treating wildfire prevention just as seriously in the high fire severity zone as we treat it in the very high fire severity zone. And with that, I'll shut up and take any questions.
Yeah, Joe, you've covered so much. I'll pass on my follow-up questions, but the Inflation
enough.
Reduction Act, I think is a good idea to draw some funds from them at some point down the road. There's a lot there.
All right, thank you.
Captain Coven, do you have your hand up around this issue, or is that?
Who?
Damon Covington had his hand up.
Oh,
Or is that something else? It could be. Sorry.
No, I don't have my hand up.
okay.
right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Joe. That was very informative. There may be some questions in the Q&A box in the Zoom that might come up for you. Let's move on, please. And we're going to hear from Fire Marshal Felicia Bryant on expectations for managing vegetation this season and other topics. Thank you very much, Ms. Bryant.
Apologies. I was in the middle of answering a question on the Q&A, and I apologize for the individual who asked about the ACA portal. As soon as I finish speaking, I'll continue to type the directions on how to get your vegetation date inspection schedule. So I apologize for that. Good afternoon or evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. This is an exciting time for the Fire Prevention Bureau. As you have all heard, everyone has spoken of or highlighted the vegetation management program that Oakland Fire Department spends so much time on. I know this is the beginning part of the season where most people are curious, but believe it or not, we continuously work on how to create a successful vegetation management plan throughout the year. With Mr. DeVries and other city members, leaders, we continue to make this a priority with our partnerships with Caltrans, East Bay Mud, and any other government agencies or that has land within the city of Oakland. This year, our vegetation management program will begin officially June 20th. Some inspections will begin a little bit earlier, and it's always been the practice of Fire Prevention Bureau that for properties that ended the previous season as in a non-compliant status, meaning that they did not pass their vegetation management program, they always start a week or two before. So some inspections, you'll start to see some inspections happening around the week of June 12th, but the 20th is when you will begin to see all fire engines out in the high fire severity zone completing the inspections as we always do every year. This year it's starting a little late for some obvious reasons, and I know most people tend to see us start in May, but we pushed it back to the latter part of June just because of the amount of rain that we had and the amount of vegetation growth. There's this thin line of making sure that we get to the vegetation right before it becomes overwhelming, but we don't get to it too soon where it grows back and we're back in that situation of having this high amount of vegetation growth towards the latter part of the season. We have our goats coming into the city. They should be here tomorrow. We've been prepping for them. This was a big deal for us and trying to make sure that they are able to come to the city and do the great work that they do. They're probably going to get about 1,200 to 1,300 acres of land that they will be grazing on. The first area that they're going to be in is the Grizzly Peaks area, and then the second is King Estates. After that, we will have a schedule, or we should have a more formative schedule for the entire city. And this typically is how we've done it every year. They come in, we get the goats going, and then we are able to generate a schedule based on need and assessing all the lots that we have the goats go to. We also have hand crews that go out to various city lots, and those crews will be starting in the month of June as well. This year we did it a little differently. We partnered with Public Works, And that was a very interesting process, but I think it's one that's going to work well for us going into this season due to the amount of vegetation growth. I saw a question in the chat regarding some city lot properties and their growth. If anyone ever has any questions about it, email in the wildfire prevention email is the best resource for getting an immediate response. Supervisor Adam Ball, some of you may know him. He does a good job of managing that email, and he also does a good job in making sure that his team goes out to these properties, check them out, and also verifying if they're city lots or they could be owned privately or by a state agency or other business that operates within the city. So we do a good job of managing that and making sure that as homeowners, you feel that you've created a safe, defensible space, as well as the city maintaining their lots and other agencies who have land in the city maintain theirs as well. Joe DeVries already spoke on it, and most of you probably already received it, which is the mailer. No, there hasn't been many changes this year regarding the requirements. Chief Covington, as he alluded to, the biggest thing that you can help in supporting the firefighters in any type of emergency response in the event of a fire is creating safe, defensible space between you and the vegetation on your land or in your neighbors. Most neighbors work well together. Some neighbors don't. I understand that. The Fire Prevention Bureau is not here to get between the neighbors' disputes. We're here to support both of you in making sure that we maintain a safe, defensible space for everyone who has property within the city of Oakland, especially within the high fire severity zone. I think I've touched on everything. I'm sure there's other questions. I've answered quite a few in the Q&A, but if there's no specific question, I believe I can tap out. No? Yes?
I have one question that you are already answering, but I think it would be a benefit for us to hear it. Last year, there was some kind of a delay in getting the information posted on Excel. Is that all set up now this year so that we can go in now and find out the dates?
The dates are there. They're currently there. Yes. So
Okay.
it's unfortunately, I know a few years ago it was like right on top. You didn't have to do any digging. You have to do a little bit of digging. And that was the question that I was starting to answer in the Q&A. So I don't know if that question is still open for me to answer. If not, then I will go ahead and post the information in the chat so people can see how to do it. But the dates are there and you can see when your inspection is scheduled. I know, Robbie, if you don't mind me answering this question, I know there was a question about rescheduling. That was in one of the questions that you had sent over for us to look into. So on a cell itself, you cannot reschedule. It's not set up for that. And actually, we would prefer that property owners didn't reschedule. But if for some reason they needed to reschedule because they knew they were going to be out of town or they asked questions, then they can email the wildfire prevention email and try to submit a request that way. But we cannot guarantee that it's going to be accommodated, but we will try our best to do so. And the reason is because most of our inspections, we do them in blocks. And so we try to do it at the same time while we're in those neighborhoods.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Felicia Bryant. That's very helpful. And let's move on. Jessica File is going to speak about emergency management. Thank you, Jessica.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Piedmont Pines Neighborhood Association, for allowing me to speak with you today. My name is Jessica File, and I am the Emergency Services Manager within the Oakland Fire Department. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about who we are, what we do, evacuation planning, and emergency management overall. I did want to just let you know our mission is to build community resilience through preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery to all types of hazards. We're looking at our core services to coordinate, develop, and maintain emergency plans, build and maintain citywide emergency response capability and capacity, and support citywide efforts to build community resilience, manage the Communities of Oakland Respond to Emergencies program, or the CORE program, which many of you may have heard of before, and to activate, manage, and maintain the Emergency Operations Center. I did want to talk to you a little bit about our new emergency operations plan. In April, City Council adopted a new emergency operations plan and it is posted on our website. And the emergency operations plan describes how the people and the property will be protected during an emergency. It details who's responsible for carrying out specific actions, sets forth lines of authority, and organizes relationships and outlines how those actions will be coordinated. And this will support the city's response to all types of hazards. I know many of you are concerned about evacuation. So we'll talk a little bit about evacuation planning. The city of Oakland, in conjunction with Alameda County, launched Zone Haven as an emergency evacuation and warning tool. Zone Haven helps emergency responders quickly identify and communicate areas impacted by disasters and warn the community whether they need to evacuate, shelter in place, or are safe to return home. We also have the ability to utilize an advisory system with this. Careful consideration was given in the development of the Oakland zones. The areas with narrow winding infrastructure were structured with 500 or fewer homes or structures in those areas. This was done to allow for phased evacuations, targeting our highest threat areas first. In areas of the city with wider infrastructure and multiple ways of egress, larger zones were developed, but specific hazard zones were kept in mind. For example, when we're talking about the tsunami inundation area, we used the actual tsunami inundation zones along the coastal region to help develop those boundaries. Finally, all facilities within each zone that have special evacuation considerations, such as schools and daycare centers with more than 12 students, were identified so that we understand any areas with special evacuation needs. While we do want all residents to know their zone before an emergency occurs, it's not necessary for residents to actually have that memorized. When an incident does occur, requiring an advisory, a shelter in place, or an evacuation, we will send an AC alert message with geographic boundaries for that zone and a map image, similar to something that you see on the screen right now. So you'll see the zone name, and also we'll put out information such as commonly known as Marywood, north of, south of, east of, and west of, with the largest roads that will potentially be around that zone. So there will be tools and resources there to help you in understanding where you need to evacuate and where it does not need to evacuate. So some other things we want to talk about are priority routes, temporary evacuation points, evacuation shelters, and sustainable training, okay? So evacuation terminology. You may have seen, I know we have a lot of partners that are providing this information, pushing this information out to the community, but Cal OES adopted in May of 2020 these particular terms: evacuation order, evacuation warning, and shelter in place. So evacuation order means that there is an immediate threat to life and it is a lawful order to evacuate now, and the area will be closed to public access. An evacuation warning means that you may need to think about evacuating now. There is a potential threat to life and or property, and if you need additional time, consider evacuating now. We also have shelter in place, which requests that you go indoors, shut and lock doors and windows, and prepare to self-sustain until further notice. So how do we get this information out to you, to our community? Okay. It's critically important for all Oaklanders to sign up for AC Alert. AC Alert works in conjunction with Zone Haven, and we use those two tools together to send emergency alerts to the community. So we have more than just the AC Alert tool. We also have traditional and social media. We can utilize wireless emergency alerts, but if you do not have a cell phone signal in your home, that wireless emergency alert is not going to reach you. So it's very, very important to sign up for all of the potential tools to help you get the information as quickly as you can. Additionally, we do have sirens throughout the community, and they are tested the first Wednesday of every month. If you hear a 3-minute fast wail, that is a fire notification. If you hear a 3-minute steady tone, that is a shelter in place notification. And a 3-minute slow wail is a tsunami notification. So again, I urge you to sign up for AC Alert so that we can notify you of any types of hazards. But again, additionally, we have that wireless emergency alerting authority to be able to push notifications to residents. I do want to stress that if in doubt, evacuate. Okay? But we do have the ability to go and look at the Zone Haven website to see what the status of your zone is. Now, as a resident, what should you do? Okay? First of all, I want you to know 2 ways out. Know 2 ways out of your neighborhood. And it's important to practice them. Because I know, like generally when I go to work, I always drive the exact same way to work. If I don't practice an alternate route, I'm not going to know it in a time of disaster or a time of emergency. So think about, the fact that your normal way may not be the best way. I know Chief Covington talked about hardening your home. That is incredibly important. And there are a lot of resources from the Oakland Fire Safe Council to be able to help you support that. If you need to, go early. If you need additional time to get out of your home and get to a safe space, please do so. And for residents with access and functional needs, or those that have large animals, you may want to consider relocating or evacuating in times of heightened potential. So the things that we want to talk about, again, be ready. So create and maintain that defensible space, get set, prepare your family and home ahead of time, and go when wildfire strikes. So go early for your safety. When a evacuation order is sent, please adhere to it. In California, wildfires aren't a question of if, but when. So if you live near or in an area that is at risk, it's imperative to protect yourself and your family and your home. And that preparation starts with ready, set, go. I do want to talk about a couple of the resources we also provide. The City of Oakland launched the CORE program, or Communities of Oakland Respond to Emergencies, in 1990, in direct result of the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. This program was modeled after something that turned into the Community Emergency Response Team training, which we have now adopted to prepare individuals, families, and neighborhoods for an all hazards event. So we want to encourage folks, if you have the opportunity and you have the ability to sign up for this training. We understand that that CERT training may not be for everyone. So we have an additional opportunity for personal emergency preparedness training, which is to prepare yourself and just your family for an emergency, to ensure that you have the basic skills and tools to ensure that you are able to get out and to sustain yourself in the event of any type of disaster. We also have a whole lot of other training available if folks are willing to volunteer to support the community. Things such as emergency respite center training, which is shelter operations, also how to work with people with access and functional needs, and preparing yourself mentally and psychologically for a disaster in our awareness, resilience, and tools training. You can see a lot of our volunteers going through our CERT training. It was a wonderful time, and that does take a little bit of dedication to be able to get through that 24 hours of CERT training. But again, if you would like just personal emergency preparedness training, that's only an hour to an hour and a half time commitment, and we are more than willing to come to your community to be able to do that. I did want everybody to know that June 3 through 11 is CERT week. And if you have any additional questions about our Oakland CERT program, please go to our website. You can search for Ready Oakland, and that will get you there. But also we have the actual URL down at the bottom. And if you want to use a QR code, we've got that for you too.
Thank you, Jesse. You covered a lot in a short time. Just a couple of quick questions, then I think we have to move on. But I'm curious, there are no emergency centers like Chabot or schools that you designate, right, for people to go to if they can't clear out entirely. Is that right? Or is
So we've actually identified 50 locations throughout the city that could be emergency shelters or temporary evacuation points. So in the event of an actual emergency where we need to evacuate individuals, we will turn on or make publicly visible whatever the temporary evacuation point or shelter that is identified for that incident. So it will be dependent on the incident, and that will be pushed out in the different alerting platforms at that point in time.
okay? And in the past, you know, cities put on these emergency preparedness drills citywide, and people are given scripts, and then the neighborhoods get together. Is that something that's going to happen again, or is that not efficient use of your time?
No, absolutely. Actually, this week we are doing a commodity point of distribution drill that is happening at Arroyo Viejo Recreation Center, where we're activating what would be a resource to provide that last mile distribution of things like food and water to residents. But we're only activating that one center. But those types of drills we conduct on an annual basis, and will continue to do so.
Yeah, I'm in neighborhood-based incident events that people can gather around, figure out where in their neighborhood or their group they would, how they would help people or be prepared to leave or whatever the case is. So that's maybe a future
Okay,
suggestion.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much. We've got two more items on our agenda. One from the Department of Transportation and followed by our citizens group, the Oakland Fire Safe Council. But first, we'll start with Vlad Vlasovsky from the interim city engineer from the Department of Transportation. Thank you very much, Vlad.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, everybody, Stan and Robbie and other folks on the line. My name is Vlad Vlasovsky. I'm a retired city engineer with the city of Oakland. I retired a little over 2 years ago and was asked to come back to work on a number of different issues for the Department of Transportation. I'm only working part-time, and Piedmont Pines utility undergrounding is one of the projects that I am working on in my tenure. So I want to give you a little bit of a history, not very long. I have a very short presentation. Piedmont Pines undergrounding was under discussion by the city council and prioritized as early as late 1990s. 1999 and 2000 was declared a priority location for undergrounding by the city council at that time. And because it was such a large area, it was broken into 3 segments for a number of different reasons, for logistics, for cost considerations, and I'll just give you an idea. In discussions with PG&E, Piedmont Pines is our largest undergrounding district project in the state. Piedmont Pines Phase 1 was successfully undergrounded, and that was completed some number of years ago. I was not involved in that project, probably at least 7, 8, maybe more years ago. Piedmont Pines Phase 2. I won't go too much into the history, but as some of the folks on the line here know, that your former council member fought very long and hard with the California Public Utilities Commission, with our city attorney's office. Well, I would say your council member, along with the support from the city attorney's office and from our Department of Transportation, fought very hard, and we were able to have the California Public Utilities Commission reverse their initial finding that their initial decision that phase 2 of the project was not eligible. We were able to have that overturned. And it was, I won't go again into too much detail, but there was a technical question about the eligibility of the project. We experienced approximately a 2 to almost 3 year delay on beginning design on the project for a number of different reasons related to PG&E's solvency, financial solvency, and reprioritizing other fire suppression efforts internally. The good news is that we have finally begun design activities with PG&E as the lead in undergrounding the utilities. Just last month in April, PG&E held their kickoff meeting. I was in attendance. A number of the other utility companies were invited and attended. AT&T, Comcast, Extenet, which is a wireless provider, and they laid out a schedule, which I will try to put into the chat here, and I'll kind of walk you through it very briefly. Let's see, how can I see? Sorry. It might not be very user-friendly, but I'll just walk you through it very briefly. As I mentioned, PG&E has begun their electrical design which means of the underground trenches, beginning in April of this year, and they're estimating it'll take approximately 18 months for them to conclude that, including coordination with the other utility companies, of which the city of Oakland is a party, because we will be putting our overhead street lighting conduits underground. They're looking at having their land acquisition, contracting, and permitting take place between late this year and concluding in October of 2024. And their early projection is to break ground in summer of 2025 and conclude approximately with the last stages in late 2027, which includes cutting over all the utilities from overhead to underground to all the residences, and removing the poles and conductors, etc. So that's kind of a short snapshot of where we are with phase 2. As I mentioned, we're just in the very early stages of our coordination with PG&E, and we're working with Harris Associates, which is the consulting engineers that are working with the city of Oakland to assist. And beyond that, I don't have anything on phase 3, which is the next phase of the project. Although I know that some folks want to talk about that or have some questions about it. So at this point, I'm just going to stop my brief presentation and open it up to any questions that you may have.
Hi, Vlad. I know that you're probably not going to want to answer this, or the answer is tough. But why can't phase 3 get started simultaneously? There are various stages that each phase goes through, and there are, it would seem to me that while one phase is going on and one stage is going on in phase 2, that something can be done, like a boundary map could be created for phase 3.
I interject that phase 3 abuts contiguously with Joaquin Miller Park, which is probably the most vital area to include as a phase, but I'm sorry for the interruption.
I think I'll answer this the way I've answered it for the last year and a half or so since I came back with the city and working on this in my 10 hours a week or so. It's really our bandwidth to take on a project that is at this point unfunded. It takes a lot of time, energy, effort, money to do all the activities that you discussed. We're just now at the beginnings of phase 2, and that's really where we're putting all our efforts. So that's kind of the short answer, not necessarily a very palatable answer, but it's the absolute truth. Is we just have so many other initiatives, projects within the Department of Transportation. It's not a funded initiative right now. The only way that we get paid for our staff costs is by recovering from the people who get assessed in the future. So right now we're accumulating costs in consideration of the residents who will be paying in assessments to underground the city's streetlight system.
Which is really a timing issue because the city does get reimbursed through the assessment district. And the real issue is having this, you saying having the staff to get the seed money ahead of time that will be reimbursed at the long term. It seems to me it's a little bit of a short range way of looking at it when in fact the city will get reimbursed.
I think you heard at the beginning of the program, Brandon Harame saying that we're facing a record shortfall in the general fund. The only source that we could really realistically look at is general fund funding to carry those costs for some number of years until whether it's staff costs and or consultant costs, any other expendables. So it would be a decision for the city to make. But right now, I think it's not on the books.
Okay, I'll let you go. All right, thanks, Vlad.
Thank you very much, Vlad, from the Department of Transportation. Our final speaker for the evening is Doug Mosher, who is representing the Oakland Fire Safe Council. This is a group of residents in Oakland who are advocating and helping their neighbors prepare for the event of fire. So thank you, Doug. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. So Oakland Fire Safe Council, we were founded in 2014. We are a nonprofit organization. We were started by Sue Piper, who was a 1991 firestorm survivor, and Ken and Dinah Benson. We're one of over 100 fire safe councils throughout the state of California. And as a nonprofit, we of course have a board and many volunteers that help out. And we're always looking for more volunteers. So please step up if you can. So we are committed to wildfire prevention, and that includes vegetation management, of course, emergency and wildfire preparedness, building resilient Oakland communities. And this has been mentioned previously this evening that wildfire is not just a threat to the hills, it's a threat to a large part of the city. We do partner with not only the city, but Alameda County and other fire safe councils around us. That includes the brand new Berkeley Fire Safe Council. And there are others as well. Diablo Fire Safe Council is in Contra Costa County. We work closely with them. And we share best practices not only among our local fire safe councils, but with fire safe councils throughout the state of California. And there is our website, oaklandfiresafecouncil.org. We really encourage you to go take a look. There's a lot of information on our site regarding wildfire prevention and preparedness. So advocacy is a key function of our Fire Safe Council. We review local, state, federal legislation and policies. We also provide input into that legislation and those policies. We back community safety and resiliency. again, by providing feedback on legislation. We certainly support the Oakland Fire Department. We work very closely with Emergency Management Services Division and Vegetation Management. And we also work with other agencies around us, including Bay Area Air Quality and CAL FIRE, our CAL FIRE Santa Clara unit, and local agencies, including PG&E, East Bay Mud, East Bay Regional Parks, and so on. And we promote state-of-the-art methods for wildfire prevention. For example, we are working with the University of California and their National Science Foundation grant for risk reduction in hazard-prone communities that includes wildfire evacuation strategies. A couple of wins we've had. One is that, and again, this has been mentioned, I think Joe mentioned this, is the City Council resolution in 2019 to designate wildfire prevention as a city priority. We worked on that with the city and very happy that that was passed. And then we are working also on the East Bay Wildfire Prevention and Vegetation Management MOU, which is, again, has been mentioned. There's information about that on our website, and come the beginning of June, there will be some additional information and announcements on this interagency wildfire prevention memo of understanding. Preparedness and prevention, that's something that we've worked on quite hard over the past couple of years. We have a lot of educational materials around wildfire preparedness, wildfire prevention. We provide workshops. Jessica mentioned the PEP workshop. We give that as well, personal emergency preparedness. And we actually have now a wildfire and emergency preparedness workshop, which is a free 1-hour workshop. And it focuses more on wildfire, again, preparedness and prevention. So some of the things I'll talk about in a second. We have a lot of guides on our website on different various preparedness topics, including home hardening for wildfire. That came up as a question. Here's an example of one of our guides on notifications and alerts. So local notifications, how to get those, how to know what to do. And we send out an e-newsletter every couple of weeks with a lot of information, pertinent information, much of it on wildfire, again, preparedness and prevention. You can sign up for that on our website. We have a lot of wildfire safety programs, including FireWise USA. I want to mention this. It's a program from the National Fire Protection Association. We are helping communities throughout Oakland, mostly in the hills and foothills, become Wildfire USA recognized. The process is fairly straightforward, and it encourages you as neighbors to work within your community to make your community more fire safe. It has obvious advantages in being in a more fire safe neighborhood, but it can also help you keep and maintain your homeowner's insurance. And some insurance companies give a discount to FireWise USA recognized communities. So we're helping Oakland communities through the process. We have 2 FireWise USA recognized communities so far in Oakland. We're working with a half a dozen or so more, and would love to work with the Montclair organized neighborhoods and get all of Piedmont Pines to be FireWise USA recognized. So that firescaping is a new program we have for vegetation, fire safe vegetation, landscaping. We have a lot of information on red flag warnings, on wildfire monitoring, ember safety, home hardening, safe street parking that was mentioned. We have a video we made with Oakland Fire Department. You can show your neighbors about why it's so important to park safe on our streets. And then we have a 2-way radio network for communication. So all of this is on our website. I'll drop that link in the chat. And we're more than happy to work with all of you out there to have you become more fire safe communities. Thank you. And again, I'll put our contact information in the chat.
Thanks, Doug. I only want to just comment how important it is to have advocates pushing, and policymakers, politicians on the same page as they have been, at least tonight, to make things move forward, because there are lots of issues that people want to have implemented. So thanks, Doug, for all the good work you do, and Ken.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks to the panelists. Thanks for the people who have signed on. to join. We've had almost 100 people joining in at various times this evening. We haven't had many people drop out right here at the end. Piedmont Pines really prioritizes fire safety. That's one of our very, very top priorities. We try to keep you informed through forums like this. Undergrounding is a huge topic for us. We really strongly encourage you to take advantage of and help out the Oakland Fire Safe Council for greater coordination across boundaries. Reduce the fuel load in our open spaces is a big topic, and to that end, we work to get dumpsters placed at the intersection of Ascot and Chelton. That's where you can put surplus fuel that you've cleared off of your property, and the next one coming up is on June 2nd. And so with that, I'm going to call this meeting to a close, and thanks to everybody who's helped organize this. Thanks so much for our city government representatives to help out on this topic, the fire department and the Oakland Fire Safe Council. Thank you all very much, and stay safe, and reach out to us if you have questions. We've been keeping track of the Q&A, and we'll do what we can to help.